I bet you've heard that white flour, sugar, and milk cause inflammation in the body. And I bet you've got a friend who told you they're on an anti-inflammatory diet. But what does that even mean? Can food really cause inflammation in the body? What's the danger in that? And if so, is there a food that prevents this inflammation? These are the questions we're going to answer in today's video in our nutrition series. And I can already tell you, you're going to be surprised when you find out that you can protect yourself from this inflammation without having to give up the foods you love. So, if you don't want to miss any of the next videos, make sure to subscribe to the channel and tell me in the comments below, what topic do you want me to talk about in the next video? Before we dive into the whole story about inflammatory foods, we need to understand a bit more about what inflammation really is. Inflammation is a process that helps protect us, and it's not always a bad thing. Let's take an example. One day, you're walking around the house and distracted. You stub your toe on the bed. Ouch! Your toe starts getting red, swelling up, and throbbing with pain. But deep inside, inflammation is happening, specifically an acute inflammatory reaction. Hundreds of cells in your toe have burst and immediately release substances that shouldn't be there. Some of these are inflammatory mediators. These mediators call in defense cells and increase blood flow to make it easier for them to arrive. You feel your toe swelling and throbbing. This is blood circulation increasing because of a natural inflammatory process, which is there to clean out the dead cells. When the defense cells realize there's nothing left to fight or clean, the inflammatory mediators stop recruiting new cells, and everything goes back to normal. Something similar happens when a virus or bacteria invades the body. The invader is seen as foreign, and the affected cells release inflammatory mediators that attract defense cells. Inflammation starts at the site. The immune system cells attack, and if all goes well, the infection is resolved. Okay, but what does this have to do with nutrition? Are you saying a single food can cause this whole response in the body? When do foods trigger inflammation? Let's look at an example. Anna has celiac disease, a type of gluten intolerance. Due to genetics, her body can't digest gliadin, a protein found in gluten. Gliadin is seen as foreign by the immune system. When Anna eats something with gluten, her immune system attacks both the gliadin and her own intestinal cells, causing damage to nutrient absorption and uncomfortable symptoms like bloating and pain. That's why people with celiac disease need to stop eating gluten-containing foods like wheat flour, which is found in bread, pasta, and other products. Unlike someone who is simply gluten intolerant and can't digest it well, Anna's body triggers inflammation every time she comes into contact with it. Another common situation that causes inflammation is when someone is allergic to milk. For example, to find out if it's an allergy, intolerance, or even a genetic condition, it's essential to consult a gastroenterologist for a diagnosis. Alright, we all know that some people can't eat certain foods and that those foods are clearly inflammatory for them. But there's a more silent type of inflammation that doesn't show up suddenly like allergies or autoimmune diseases like celiac disease. And it's this kind of inflammation that will help us understand what inflammatory foods really are. Imagine you're a successful professional who's always eaten healthily and exercised regularly. But suddenly, your company calls you to move to a new city and you accept the opportunity. Amazing! The problem, your healthy routine completely changes. You don't have time to exercise anymore, and you start eating out at restaurants every day where the food is much greasier. Like anyone would, you notice in the first few months that you started gaining weight. Naturally, when we eat more than we need and don't burn it off, our body activates an incredible mechanism. Our fat cells, which are highly adaptable to store any extra energy from calories, start to expand. The problem is, if this keeps happening, the cells can struggle to expand and go into emergency mode. What scientists have found is that fat cells release inflammatory mediators day after day. In other words, the excess calories in your diet, combined with the lack of exercise, cause inflammation. But this time, it's different from when you stub your toe acute inflammation or from celiac disease, or even from someone drinking milk with a dairy allergy. It's chronic, silent inflammation that builds up over time. The same chronic inflammation is observed in conditions like diabetes and in people with high cholesterol and triglycerides. This ongoing inflammation silently damages cells for years, creating long-term health risks. And the most dangerous part, this silent inflammation happens without causing pain or discomfort. So yes, your diet can be inflammatory. But fortunately, the inflammatory state of your body doesn't depend on one single food, but on the overall combination of what you eat. Let's take sugar and processed foods, the famous inflammatory foods. They increase the risk of being overweight or obese, which causes chronic inflammation. But keep in mind, to reach the point of chronic inflammation, we're talking about an excess in an unbalanced diet, not about someone who eats fruits, vegetables, exercises, but still enjoys 4 squares of chocolate at the end of the day. It's not the sugar or the ham that's inflammatory. It's the excess weight and obesity. Got it. But I'm sure you, who've always heard about anti-inflammatory foods, are probably waiting for a list in this video. Don't worry, the list is coming. But after that explanation of how inflammation from diet happens, this video deserves a like, right? So, is there a way to protect yourself from inflammation through an anti-inflammatory diet? As you might have guessed, one of the keys to having an anti-inflammatory diet is simple: control the fat accumulation in your body. The most effective way to do this is through a healthy diet, with fewer calories than what caused the weight gain. Other important measures are regular exercise and stress management, since we often eat more than we need just because we're stressed. Additionally, any diet that helps you control diabetes, high triglycerides, and cholesterol can be considered anti-inflammatory since it tackles the root cause of inflammation, preventing excess weight and obesity. And about those so-called anti-inflammatory foods, there's some truth to them. Let's take curcumin, a compound found in turmeric, that yellow spice. Research has found that curcumin has an anti-inflammatory effect. But here's the thing. Knowing this, you might decide to start adding turmeric to everything at home to prevent inflammatory diseases. Well, it's not that simple. Guys, we're not isolated cells or lab animals. We're more complex human beings. And according to research, when we eat turmeric, very little of the curcumin we ingest actually reaches our cells. Most of it gets eliminated. To know if turmeric really has anti-inflammatory effects in humans, we need randomized clinical trials. And so far, the studies are controversial about whether curcumin can reach the bloodstream in enough quantity to have that effect. And this applies to the entire list of anti-inflammatory foods you've probably seen out there. Grapes, which contain resveratrol, green tea that has a substance I won't even try to pronounce, apples with quercetin, plums, strawberries, and grapes again that have anthocyanins, and even cinnamon with cinnamaldehyde. Have you heard of any anti-inflammatory foods from this list? Comment below. All these foods show anti-inflammatory effects in cells and even in animals. But science still hasn't found a way to get these compounds to reach the bloodstream intact enough to work in humans. So, is the whole anti-inflammatory food thing a lie? Not necessarily, because there's a new and promising field of science that studies how the bacteria in our gut can control inflammation in our bodies. The composition of our gut bacteria populations can determine whether we have a higher risk of infections and, as a result, inflammation. And what's cool is that science has discovered that some types of bacteria can't protect our gut properly, increasing toxin absorption and making us more prone to immune system reactions and inflammation. In other words, if you have these bacteria, you're more likely to experience inflammation. But science has also shown that we can control through diet what types of bacteria we carry throughout life, nurturing the good bacteria over the bad ones. Foods aren't anti-inflammatory by themselves, but they can help cultivate bacteria that reduce inflammation. Pretty cool, right? This can be done through adequate fiber intake, like what you find in all kinds of fruits and vegetables, grains, especially whole grains, and legumes like beans and lentils. Besides fiber, the compounds found in the foods I mentioned earlier also have positive effects. This is where the resveratrol from grape juice and the curcumin from turmeric come in, acting on our gut bacteria rather than directly as anti-inflammatories. So, it's not necessary to cut out foods like flour and milk without reason or give up chocolate after lunch to have an anti-inflammatory diet. We can call any diet that nourishes the body with the right amount of calories, nutrients, and bioactive compounds an anti-inflammatory diet. And that's it for today's video. Now you know that inflammation isn't just about specific foods, but more about the balance of what you eat and how you take care of your body. So, tell me in the comments, have you noticed any foods that seem to trigger inflammation for you? I'd love to hear your experience. If you found this information helpful, don't forget to give the video a thumbs up and make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification so you don't miss out on any of our upcoming videos. And hey, while you're here, go ahead and click on the video that's popping up on your screen. It's perfect for you if you're interested in learning more about how diet affects your health. See you in the next one.